I was expecting a diagnosis of Crohn's disease when my phone rang and the doctor said, "You have a tumor on your pancreas." All I could say was, okay, okay. Before cancer, or what I call my BC life, I traveled the world and I loved my spin class. But the moment I hung up the phone, we did what everyone else does in a panic. We asked Dr. Google. Now, I had spent my entire career diagnosing eye diseases, but at that moment, I couldn't see clearly. I wasn't a provider anymore. I was just a terrified patient. Dr. Google had said that there was a type of pancreas cancer called adenocarcinoma, and it was usually fatal. It had a 7% chance of survival. Well, of course, I started to pray. I prayed, if I have to have cancer, can I have a better cancer? Any other cancer but this one with better odds. My prayers. I was diagnosed with adenocarcinoma. I remember my first time in oncology. I just sat there frozen, watching as they call patients one by one back into the chemo suite. My heart pounded every time I heard the words, "They're ready for you." Suddenly I started sobbing. I didn't want to be like them. Problem was, I already was one of them. When I asked my oncologist what my odds were, he just said, "You know it's bad." Think of it this way. For every 100 people diagnosed when I was, only 7 survived 5 years. When I scheduled surgery 12 years ago, I didn't even know if this tumor was cancerous. The surgeon said, if it's not cancer now, it will be in the future. I had what is known as a Whipple. It is a complex surgery that essentially rebuilds your entire GI system. They remove several organs, and then they created a new pathway so that I can eat and digest food. This is me a few days after surgery with that blank, narcotic stare. I was bedridden for a few days. But then afterwards, the daily goals, at least some of them, were simple. Get out of bed, sit in a chair, and take a few steps. But the moment I stood up, my body felt strange. I was hunched over. My upper body caved in as if there was nothing supporting it. When I tried to walk, my legs were weak, and I walked with this awkward, jerky gait as if my brain and my legs were disconnected. 3 months later, things still hadn't improved. I was still being wheeled around because after a few steps, I'd be exhausted. I needed help getting out of bed and getting dressed. My bed became my captor, my bedroom a prison. Just going out, even to a doctor's appointment, felt more like a trip to Disney. But now, what if I show you this? Just 6 months after my surgery, I run a marathon. I crossed that finish line strong, triumphant. Would you see me as a hero? Would you find me inspiring? Here's the thing. Photo is a fake. I never ran a marathon after surgery. My finish line was making it from my bed to the living room. My biggest accomplishment back then was getting out of bed by myself. I'd grab the side of the mattress and pull myself up. And let me tell you, I was so excited just to be able to do that. 2 years later, things still hadn't improved. I was weak and malnourished, wearing girl size 14 clothing because nothing else fit. But after years, I finally had a name for what my body had gone through: a spinal stroke. That's when the blood supply gets cut off to the spinal cord, and in my case, probably happened during surgery when my blood pressure dropped. Wait, did I forget to mention My favorite line people would say back then, "You look great." But my reality is, I haven't returned to BC. My before cancer body is gone. And I still struggle with balance and mobility. 4 weeks ago, I had a fall, and I wear special shoes to help with my balance. And even though I had them on, I still fell. But tonight, I wanted to wear the cute shoes. Now that you know this about me, do you think society would see me as a hero? Would you? At one of my 60 hospital visits during my first year after surgery, I came face to face with what the world thought I should look like. It was part of a campaign suggesting that pancreas cancer didn't have to be a death sentence, that you could come back better than before with determination and resilience. But remember, 93% of people diagnosed when I was didn't survive. I just stood there and stared at that poster. I felt like all the air had been sucked out of my body. Then I leaned in and read, he ran a marathon just 6 months after his Whipple surgery. That's the same surgery I had. Instead of feeling inspired, I felt like a failure. And there's a sadness that pops up from time to time because cancer did change me. And it took me a long time to accept that. But it's okay to say that out loud. Have you ever noticed the language of cancer is violent? Fight, beat it, warrior, battle. When did surviving become a war? I have literally never been on a battlefield, and I am not a soldier. But if cancer is a war, then I'm a soldier whether I want to be one or not. With cancer and it being a war, you're either winning or you're losing. There's no room for just surviving. We just didn't stumble onto these words. We were drafted into them, and we've been expected to be cancer heroes ever since. On paper, I am what you call the ultimate success story. I am NED, no evidence of disease. My friends call me the unicorn, but even unicorns have scars. I just had to let go of the person I was before. I am one of 6 million, the 25% of cancer survivors that live with long-term invisible disabilities. Things like neuropathy, a burning and a tingling in your hands and feet that never go away. Chemo brain, forgetting words you've known your entire life. Or the grief of losing who you used to be. But you never see that on the posters. What if we, the survivors, stopped trying to look unstoppable? What if we shared the real stuff, the hard days, the setbacks, the quiet wins that no one else sees? It's not that we aren't willing to share, it's that the world isn't always ready to listen. A story like mine doesn't make it into the media because it's not the cancer hero's journey. I didn't run a race. I didn't climb that mountain. All I did was get out of bed and do the best that I could. And yet, the myth of the superhuman cancer survivor just won't die. I still see it everywhere. Back then, anytime I would see one of those stories, they nearly broke me. I would start berating myself. What is wrong with you? Why are you the only one who can't do that? The thing is, these stories aren't meant for us, the survivors. They're meant for those untouched by cancer. Society wants and even needs to believe that cancer is always beatable, always inspiring, if you just try hard enough. We even convince ourselves that maybe it's not that bad because we've seen that person run that race through chemo or smile through it all. But even among survivors, we start to buy into the stories. When a story is everywhere and it's the only story being told, it eventually becomes the only truth. Years ago, I was part of a support group, and I met a woman there who was exhausted. Her chemo was brutal, and she was waking up early every morning to train for a marathon. Someone in the group asked her, "Why?" She looked confused by the question and said, "Because I don't want my teenage boys to think I'm weak." That story stayed with me all these years. And now with social media, there's an endless feed of cancer heroes doing extraordinary things. But they only represent a fraction of survivors. For many of us, struggling to get out of bed or make it to an appointment on time, these stories don't inspire us. They make us feel invisible. Do you want to know what the bravest thing is? It's not running a 10K through chemo. It's not climbing a mountain. It's not performing strength for everyone else's comfort. The bravest thing is allowing yourself to let yourself feel what you actually feel when the whole world is pushing you to be strong. Because survivorship isn't a race, and it shouldn't be measured in marathons. The day I stopped seeing myself as weak is the day I stopped listening to the stories. Surviving cancer is hard enough. Let's not make it harder. Think of that woman. So I'm asking you to be the one that gives that permission. For the survivor in the room, you don't have to perform strength for anyone. Not your kids, not your doctor, not for anyone who needs you to be okay so that they can be okay. You are allowed to feel what you feel. My vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was me being honest about my reality. Our vulnerability isn't a flaw, it's what keeps us going. The image of the cancer warrior has been around for over 50 years after Nixon declared the war on cancer. That's over 50 years of the wrong story. Let's not pass on this toxic myth to the next generation. This is how we begin to change the myth of the cancer warrior. Not by demanding people be superheroes, but by letting them be human. Just thank you.